Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of History Before Us. And I'm at another historic site here locally in Huntersville, North Carolina. And I'm at Cedar Grove, which is a former plantation. And I'm going to be with Abigail Jennings, who's going to give us a tour of this historic home. And she's actually walking down the steps right now. What's up, Abigail? How are you doing?
Great.
So this is Abigail, and she is going to be very gracious and show us around this immaculate home that since pre-Civil War has withstood the test of time, and so many different stories that we'll dive into, as well as the preservation efforts. And so Abigail, can you kind of lead us into what got you into historic preservation?
Sure. So I loved old houses since I was little, and one point in our life we lived in a very rural area. So my fun times after school were to go out and find old houses and explore them.
Yeah.
And from there, just whenever I traveled, I took history tours and wanted to learn whatever I could about historic architecture primarily.
Okay.
And then my husband and I got introduced to this incredible property in the summer of 2020, and were drawn in by the architecture, but we got even more drawn in by the stories.
Yeah.
And the stories throughout time of this property were so incredible that we felt like, as well as the owner who was the descendant of the person who built this property, felt like there was more we could do to share these stories.
Most definitely. And through the work in which you've done, and I'm of course going to want you to tell people how to find you and everything, you've done just that. So you've mentioned architecture, so obviously you know the different styles of homes and stuff like that in the American South. So what style home would this be in the American South?
This would be a Greek Revival.
Greek Revival.
It was built in 1831. It is a National Register property. If you go to the National Register, it may be listed under the Torrance House in Huntersville, North Carolina, but it's also known as Cedar Grove is another name. There used to be a big grove of cedars around here, and they are all, sadly, all the original cedars are gone, but they've tried to be replaced over the years.
Okay, got you. And over here, which I've seen in other places as well, this is like the seal of approval, right? Like this is the...
So this is actually a Charlotte Mecklenburg historic landmark plaque, and you'll see here the famous hornet's nest of Mecklenburg County.
So that's what it is. So for all the basketball folks, the Charlotte Hornets, this is where that came from.
Yes. So the Scots-Irish gave a feisty fight back, so that's how we got named that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about the landscape here outdoors? Because I see some buildings over here, some that are knocked down, and one that's still erected, you know, it's hanging on.
Right.
But can you tell us about the landscape and what this looked like back then?
So the records say that at one point he owned between 3,000 and 5,000 acres. So that's
and
a
is
really...
this Torrance? Or
this is James Torrance.
James Torrance, okay.
And that's a giant gap. So we look forward to in our research to narrowing that down. It may be more on the high 3,000, but we're not sure. But there were many outbuildings all over, many more than you see even remnants of today. And as far as what we have over here that's collapsed, that used to be an ice house and a granary, which is fairly interesting. And why it's also collapsed. They dug out underneath the house to store their ice.
Okay.
And back then, it's hard to believe with our mild winters that we have now, but the ice would get thick enough on the ponds and the area, they would actually go out, cut the ice, and store it in the ice house, pack it with sawdust, and people would come and be able to get ice for a couple months while it was out there.
Wow.
And then above that was the granary where they stored grain. The other little building there, we don't know the original purpose, but it's still in pretty good shape as an outbuilding.
Okay.
And same goes with the other one. What we don't see, and we can walk down there if you want to.
Yeah, let's walk and talk.
What we don't see is the enormous barn that used to be down here, a very unusual kind of barn. It's called a bank barn. They are more often found up in the northeast Pennsylvania area, which is where Hugh Torrance did land in Philadelphia there, and
There's so many people from Pennsylvania that I'm noticing ended up here in this specific area in Mecklenburg County.
Yeah.
And the reason why I didn't know if you want to walk over here, because she has some nice boots on, y'all. So
I'm used to. I boots are the way I roll.
But yeah, so can you explain
Yeah.
like that connection
Sure.
between Pennsylvania and Mecklenburg County?
Oh yes, and it's the truth for most of a lot of the southeast too. So that's where most of the ships came in from Europe for the immigrants. Came into that area, and then people, if they were indentured servants, they would generally work off their time up there, or they'd get established up there. But these folks, they were seeking much more wide open spaces, and but quite frankly, it was a very busy, bustling big town up there, and so people were wanting to find their own spaces, and so they would come down the Great Wagon Trail and into North Carolina.
Okay.
So
this is the barn.
This is not the barn.
No, the barn was.
But we're about to see. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this wasn't here the last time.
This wasn't. So this came down in that storm.
Okay.
But I can do it.
Yeah, we can make it work. Watch your head.
See?
Uh-oh.
I got
caught. We are battling branches, y'all.
Okay.
There we go. So now it's my time.
Good luck. Do the limbo. Do the limbo.
Oh, we're doing the limbo. Oh, this 45-year-old back isn't like the 20-year-old back, that's for sure. Okay.
So this was a very huge 3-story barn. It's probably a little hard to see what was what, but what we're standing on would have been the main level, and they could have just rode their horses and carriages right into this top level, and then it had another level above that for storage, and then the lower level, you can walk down here.
This is huge.
This is very huge.
This barn is humongous.
Very, very big barn. We'll see why it was called a bank barn when we get down here.
Now, obviously there's a road over here to our left, and I'm sure y'all can hear the cars going by. Was this the front of the house where we were just at? Or what I perceive as the backside?
Right, so that's a great question too. There's evidence that supports either side.
Okay.
So we have a little unknown, but the reason why we still kind of feel this is more the front is we have those double doors.
Okay.
But the contradictory evidence is at the back of the house, we have much larger columns. So the most prominent columns are on what people call the back.
Yeah.
What we've also learned since getting involved is that back side of the house didn't look like that originally. The back porch was very big and connected to those columns. And all of these woods that you see here, these trees you can see are not very big.
Nope.
And they weren't here. So this was all wide open land.
Yeah.
And so that back porch would have been an amazing place to sit and look at this enormous expanse of land.
Most definitely.
But now here we're walking in like the livestock would have walked into the lower level.
And it's a beautiful day out here, y'all. I think it's like 70 degrees, right?
It is. It's
feels
incredible.
great. This is
Yes,
the foundation
February
of it.
26th.
Okay.
So this is why it's called a bank barn, because it was actually literally built into the bank, and this provided natural geothermal heat for the livestock when it got colder, and was just really an ingenious plan of how to use the earth to work with what they needed.
Most definitely. Are there any pictures of it in its original state?
There are, and I
Okay.
can show you some of those.
Yeah.
This is can't see what this is right now, but this is a pawpaw grove that has taken over in here, and we have got a very large population of pawpaw plants here and pawpaw fruit.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if the home was built in the 1850s,
1831.
1830s, are we assuming that this was built in the exact same time period, or is there evidence saying it was later or earlier? Okay.
So where Cedar Grove stands, they actually had built another house in that same spot first. And some of the brickwork on some of the outbuildings and this stonework gives some pause to think that this possibly was here before the big house.
wow.
Because I'll show you when we walk back up there, there's a path that looks like a carriage path that led straight into this barn. But when the other house got built, you can see that path could never have supported a carriage. So
Sure.
the fact that that path existed, we think that this probably was here before the house.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's head on up.
All right.
Are we going this way again like we did last time, or?
Let's not do that way again. Let's try a different way.
Now back here on this side, there's some water that's back there.
Yes.
So what body of water is that, and how significant would have it been to supporting this plantation?
So the creek element of it did support the plantation.
Okay.
But what it looks like today is probably not what it looked like back then. And that is because the Corps of Engineers in the early 1900s made some significant changes to some of our creeks around here. And also with the formation of Lake Norman, that affected the little tributaries. So, and since my involvement in 2020, the wetlands have never been this wet. So it was almost dry several times that I was here, but it's staying really wet now, so I'm not sure what that means, but
Are we thinking that is more of a natural state for it?
Yes.
Okay,
I
so
think so.
whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because
That's right. That's what we're hoping. But the wildlife here is incredible.
yeah.
Although the home is not on much acreage now, everything around here is protected, and it's owned by either the state or Mecklenburg County.
Nice.
So these woods are completely protected, and these animals have a home.
That's good. That's good. All right.
All right, so yeah, just check this threshold out before we go much further. These are incredible rocks.
Yeah.
I mean, just the size of this, and imagining how this was all created.
Wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at this being potentially prior to 1831.
Yes.
As it relates to its building. Okay.
That is what we believe.
Cool. Now, from the stonework, and obviously there's bricks for the home.
Yes.
Do you think that they were utilizing the water and the clay and everything
Yes.
here locally?
Absolutely.
And that's how that came into fruition?
So the bricks, we have a lot of records on the bricks.
Yeah, we can walk and talk.
Yeah, if we can, that'd be good. So a master brick mason, name, get the name correct here for you. Rivafavoli was his name.
Okay.
And according to the records, there were over 20,000 bricks made here.
Wow.
Sorry, that sun is
Sounds good, yeah?
brutal for
Yeah,
me.
it's all good.
Oh, that's better.
20,000 on site.
20,000 bricks were made here and out of that creek.
Yeah.
So the stories go that they would take the oxen into the creek and then have the oxen take them in circles to stir up the clay, and then they would take the clay, put them in the bricks. They had a kiln here on site to fire those bricks. And interestingly, the Hopewell Presbyterian church nearby was built exactly at the same time as Cedar Grove, and it is made of bricks too. And so, James Torrance was the treasurer of Hopewell during that time. So we know that those construction projects had a lot of overlap, most likely.
Okay, gotcha. Makes sense.
Yes.
Love it when you don't have to work as hard to put these pieces of the puzzle together.
Oh, well, I'm sure it was a lot.
But it's definitely a lot of work, to get all this documentation and try to make some sense as it relates to the timelines and everything.
Exactly. And so you can see all of these other stone remnants here, and some of these were from the walls that have collapsed, but some of them are clearly other foundations of things that we have yet to learn exactly what they were for.
So being that this was, of course, a former plantation site, about how many people were enslaved on the property? And where were their enslaved dwellings at?
Well, we have come a long way since getting involved of knowing those
Most
answers.
definitely.
We really had some vague numbers when we first got started, but I'm very happy to report that in this past June, as part of our reunion project, Andre Kearns, who is the co-chair for that, has put together a full list of 143 people that were enslaved here. Now, we don't know the exact times that this group was here or this group was here. There were probably not that many here all at one time.
Sure.
But over the course of time, that's the number.
Yeah,
So,
and you all have done such amazing work with that. And you know, anyone who's watching this, will drop the website and everything, of course. But just amazing work. And I look forward to actually being able to attend my first event. I'm just always on the road and going, and but it's going to happen sooner than later. And they're just doing great comprehensive work of a very eclectic view of history here at this site. And so,
and it's just so interesting. The parallel of this family's story to so many other families. And I didn't really realize that when I got involved in this either. But as a Southerner, I started recognizing some of these same stories in my own family and then other people's family. And so that was the other exciting thing about this project, is it was this one string that was opening up so many other avenues and how they all weave together. So the family members, both the Torrance family and the enslaved people that were here, are connected to so many families in this area and actually throughout our country at this point. That these stories are really relevant and very interesting.
So perhaps on our way up, some of those last names, let's discuss.
Yes, sure.
So we know Torrance, and we know, let me ask you, what about the Lytles? Because you have the Torrance Lytle School that's in Huntersville as well. So is the Lytle family tied into this whole?
Well, those gentlemen were African American.
Okay.
Mr. Torrance and Mr. Lytle.
Yep.
Mr. Torrance, interestingly, was from Asheville.
Okay.
So we have not connected him directly to this family.
Okay.
But chances are, I'd be willing to bet that there was a connection somewhere.
What about the Davidsons and Alexanders, those huge family names around here?
Alexanders, Allisons, Wilsons, Caldwells. I mean, pretty much any of the old families, I can help you find a connection.
Yeah, there's a connection.
There is, and because a great resource is Chalmers Davidson's book, The Plantation World of Old Davidson.
And he was a professor at Davidson at one point, or?
He was.
Yeah, okay.
And so from that book and reading all these plantation sites and then those names, once you start digging, the children of all of those families, they all married each other. It makes sense. Yeah. And so those enslaved people also were scattered around to all of those as well. So the connections and stories are immense, and we're just trying to take them one at a time.
Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
Yes.
I was on Ancestry last night, literally till like 2:30 in the morning.
It is I am also big into that as well, and
it's addicting.
It is addicting, and the time just goes away.
Yes, it does. And it is February, so we haven't really gotten into snake season. So it's a good thing that we're out here right now, because I'm pretty sure if this was May, June, July,
we couldn't
August,
have done what we just did.
We wouldn't have been able to do that.
It would be a sea of green about 4 feet high.
Yep.
But that path I was talking about that went into that barn, it actually is hard to imagine it now, but there must have been some bridge or something, because we have this obvious little road right here. So this little tiny road bed.
There's bricks. Well,
yep.
Not bricks, but they're
stone.
Stones on
There's
each side.
a little stone bed.
Yeah.
But as you can see, it ends at the porch.
Yep.
So the theory is that this predated the house, and the other house must have been that way a little bit, so that they could go around the house. So that's the reason for that.
And so there's another building that's out here, but then there's also a huge stone that's right here.
Yes.
So is this for horses?
Yes.
Okay.
To help me get on my horse. It's a mounting stone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So with this, because we have one here and there's not one there, do you think that's why it may make sense that this perhaps also is the front of the
Maybe.
house.
I don't know, but it makes sense because that's the barn,
Touche.
you know.
It's true.
So these are the mysteries we're still solving.
And so this is the other side of
This
the
is the
home. We
other
don't know
side.
if it's the back or the front originally, but we know
Correct.
that it's here. And
So
there are
some
huge columns for
They
sure.
are very big. So some clues we have that we knew weren't right when we saw it was, number one, the staircase, how it's in front of that window.
Mm-hmm.
They never would have done that. So we knew that that was not the way it was supposed to be. We also knew that this brick here, which is lovely, laid in a herringbone pattern,
Yep.
Mr. Banks did that, and when he was here in the 50s, 60s. So we know that's not original.
Right.
So we were really wanting and hoping to find a picture of the side of the house, but the other side is so famous, it had been photographed more than anything.
Yeah.
And so we just started asking everybody, if they had a picture of the side of the house. And once we started asking about it, my husband and I were taking a walk in the woods, and I happened to see a trunk under one of those ruins. And we pulled it out.
What year was this?
2021.
So wait a minute. So a trunk
Yes.
was still there in
Yes.
2021.
Yes.
But the house had been lived in up until when?
Till 2020.
Goodness gracious. Wow.
Yeah. So I'll show you. I got a copy inside.
Yeah.
But we found the picture. And so that picture gave us clues
Sure.
of what this really looked like. And once we saw the picture, we started looking for marks that lined up. And we found them. So this porch went all the way over here. And these here were the ways things were connected. So this was actually open underneath here. The staircase was over here, so you could, in the old picture, you can see it looks like they might have kept their chicken coop underneath these porch.
Okay.
So
We
you
could
can
use
see
those right
that.
now. We could use those eggs right now,
Oh
right?
yes. And then we found the railing. This
right
is going
here.
to be hard to see, but can you see the?
Right.
No, this is actually called a shutter dog.
Okay.
This is missing the shutter here, but this. Let me find the cap of it. Let's see. Already got to get my bearings.
Yeah.
You can see like a little mushroom. There it is. Can you see this little
Oh,
mushroom
yeah.
cap?
Okay.
Do you see this?
Yep, right here.
Yep. See that? That's the railing. So that's where the
Nickel
railing.
sign. Okay.
Yeah, so that was all right there.
Man, you really have to pay attention to details.
Yes.
To be able to
And
see
the
that.
other thing that photograph I'll show you when we get inside gave us the clue to, we did not know what was going on with these windows on this lowest level, but we knew these weren't the right ones. And interesting, like the wind, I guess, has shut these because they were open. But as you can see, this is a double hung window that a craftsman tried to copy those windows, but we knew they were from the 1950s, so we did not know what was really here. But when I go inside and I'll show you that picture, I'll show you what they really did look like.
Okay, sounds good. So we have a well out here.
Yes.
And is this original to the site?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And also, again, we think predates it.
Okay.
So this roof was replaced. It was not the original roof. Stories are that this was a smokehouse.
Okay.
It had a chimney. The whole back side of it had been reconstructed. So that's pretty much all we know on that. This is incredible well here. Let me open it up for you. We do have a resident black snake who loves to hang out,
Oh, okay.
but I'm
him.
good with snakes, so don't worry.
Okay. I'm not.
But anyway, I don't know if you can shine any light down there, but it is very, very, very deep. Oh, you can.
You see the snake?
No, but I see my reflection. That's the first time I've ever seen
Oh,
that.
so we got some water in there.
Wow. Can you see yourself down there? You see
Oh,
that?
yeah, I can. Yep, I sure
I have
can.
never gotten to see that before. That is cool. Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah,
Something just jumped.
yeah, it did.
But just imagine creating this, digging this hole, laying those stones.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
a lot of work.
lot of
A lot of-
work.
Do we know where some of the enslaved individuals came from that were responsible for their portion
I
of
do
the
not.
tasks?
Well, I should say we do know that some of the first enslaved people that arrived here came through a marriage to
Okay.
Isabella Falls. And Hugh Torrance fought in the Revolutionary War, and his captain was killed in the war.
Okay.
And he married his captain's widow. And so the first enslaved people we know about the site came from that union.
Okay. You got it?
Yeah, I got it. There we go.
Okay. So now we shall walk inside this beautiful home. And let me just let everyone know that this site has been really used as a multi-purpose space. And we'll see that on the inside. But I've always been a firm believer that as long as you have a structure, it should be utilized as a very multi-dimensional space so you can make the most out of it, especially when you have people that are very driven by community. And this site is, and Abigail and her husband, this is very much a priority for them as it relates to access and being able to educate and teach people in the community, not only about the sites, but people that live in the community as well. And so you're going to be seeing that right here because there's a new exhibit that's
right.
up right now. So can you talk to us about this exhibit?
Sure, but first I want to give a little background.
Yeah.
So our first HEARTS program, and that stands for History, Ecology, Arts, Reunion, Trails, and Store, was February 2022. February 2022.
Okay.
And so our focus is by pulling one fact that we find very interesting, then we build a whole program around it. And the fact that we found really interesting, if you'll come this way, was that Richard Torrance, who was one of James's son, attended UNC Chapel Hill. And like a lot of other students at Chapel Hill during that time, they were very impressed by the poetry and writings of George Moses Horton. And George was hired by Richard to write 2 love poems for Sophia Alexander and Mary McLean. And the original poems we actually have, they're in archive at UNC Charlotte. And these are the originals, and that's them transcribed.
Okay.
And so each February, we do a program to share this connection and then build on it. So the artwork, back to that, the name of this exhibit is called Unspoken Poetry. So it's sharing the feelings without words, just by looking at it. So let's.
And we'll come back to this room.
Yes, there's lots to see in there too.
There's lots to see for sure.
The collages are all by John Miles. He goes by Trey, and it is from his series America Gentrified. And they're just beautiful works from some of the neighborhoods in Charlotte that have changed drastically over the years that he was connected to.
Yeah. And I love to see how assertive people are being with making sure that regardless of what, we can't necessarily control from a creative standpoint, like these are the things that we can control, that we can bring forth to the world so it is part of our collective memory, you know what I'm saying? And so I always find it beautiful, whether it's in rural settings or even in the inner city, where artists go out there and they take these pictures and they, have been able to create out of it because it's just that important.
Right. And this incredible diptych, too, is by Sloan Siban. And just the words it brings into my, heart, just by looking at it it is truly poetry.
Yes,
Just
most definitely.
Beautiful artwork.
Nice. And so this is the double doors that we were talking about while we were outside.
Yeah.
And so let's get a porch view here.
Sure.
And this is a very busy road now. It's becoming more and more busy just because there's so much growth that's happening here in the Huntersville area. But obviously this wouldn't have been there during the time, but this is the front porch.
That's right.
And it is a nice size front porch.
It is a very
for sure.
nice porch.
Has there been any Are there any documents, letters, or anything that speaks to the site during the Civil War?
Yes.
Okay. And are those, can you access those electronically?
Yes,
Or is
some
that
you can. They're not all. There's, I believe, around 24,000 documents right now in archive.
Wow.
So they saved everything. So you got to remember, I mean, this house had the same family in it until 2020.
So a lot of places we know in the South were affected by the burning of buildings, homes, businesses when Sherman and everyone came
Right.
through. This place was not. Do you find that to be the case for the greater Charlotte area in general, to where structures weren't
I am
damaged
not
like that?
the expert on that one,
Okay.
but I think it had more to do with the path that he traveled.
Okay.
And I think that this was not,
Part of that.
sorry,
you're
loud
good.
truck. But I do, while we're out here, the
Yeah.
White House I want to point out over here, this is Hugh Torrance's house and store, and that is where this family's story began here on this land.
Yeah.
He bought that very small log cabin and the acreage in 1779, after he came down the Great Wagon Trail from Philadelphia, went through Rowan County, and stayed with his brother a bit, Albert, there in Salisbury, before he decided to come on over here. And then that property was added on to twice, and then they built the first house here, and then they built the final house in 1831. But
Gotcha.
it is open to the public for tours, and
Yeah.
we've got wonderful docents, and it's a great history visit.
So that was the outside portion of the tour. Thanks for tuning in. But don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications to know when the video for the inside tour is uploaded. Peace and blessings.